All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. Today, we're going to be talking about how to track your macros and calories for fat loss, right? Especially since we have, beach season coming up. Maybe you want to take, your shit off with confidence. We've got water parks, we've got all these vacations and summer activities going on, camping, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is an opportunity, especially over the next 12 weeks, right? At least up here in Canada, things are going to be warming up over the next 12 weeks. If you're somewhere down south, southern part of the States, Texas, maybe Florida, things are going to be already a lot warmer, right? So this is good, something good to keep in mind year round as well, right? Depending on where you want to be, how much fat you have to lose, body recomposition, all that kind of stuff. And before we get into anything, like if you don't know who I am, my name is Miles Wold, and I own and operate the Winners Mindset Fitness Academy. This is a specific fitness academy for blue collar high performers, contractors, technicians, business owners, anybody if you're in the field or in the office and anything in between, right? We really make it work for the individual, because I've been there. I've been working in the field of landscaping, did that for about 5 years, while being a personal trainer on top of that. And I know what it's like to be on your feet 12, 14, 16-hour days, working from sun up to sundown, busting your ass, and then trying to take care of your health on top of that, right? Especially, with fast food, gas station snacks, takeout, all that kind of stuff. Now, as we get in here, like let's understand, kind of what calories and macros are. So calories is just a unit of energy, right? It's just a unit of energy, and any kind of food that has calories, any kind of liquid that has calories will be that energy bringing into our body, right? So we bring more calories by eating, and we burn more calories by moving. And then in terms of our macros, we've got 4 calories per gram, both with protein and carbs. Protein, that's going to be like your meats, Greek yogurt, dairy, all that kind of stuff. And then for carbs, we can look at the refined sugars, donuts, cakes, all that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, we've also got fruits, right? That's fruits. We got starchy carbs as well. Potatoes, sweet potato. For fruits, we've got, any kind of fruit that you can imagine. There's going to be some healthy carbs, healthy sugars in there. And then for fats, this is going to come in at 9 calories per gram. This is going to be your cooking oils. This is going to be your avocados. This is going to be your darker cuts of meat, typically, right? So that's kind of just like a broad overview of what calories are and what macros are and how those numbers are going to add up as we go along here, right? So a lot of us kind of underestimate how many calories we're actually bringing in every day, right? So like the fast food, the gas station snacks, and takeout really all pile on. And the next thing you know, we've kind of gained, 30, 40, 50 pounds over the years, right? Especially, if you're more active in the field, you might only, maybe you don't gain anything at all, right? Depending on how busy you are. But if maybe you've been in the field and you've transitioned more into an office position, the amount of calories that you're burning, the units of energy that you're burning, the amount of activity that you're doing goes down because you're more in that office sedentary position. So I've really seen that a lot where, business owners, maybe been more active in the field 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then they've moved and scaled up their business, and now they're more to an office position, and they're not moving as much. They're not in the field as much. They're not being as active because they're working on their business with sales and marketing instead of in their business, being in the field and actually doing the labor end of things, actually being the craftsman, right? So really important to note that, if you are in that position where you've transitioned from the field to the office and you've kind of gained this weight, this is really going to apply to you. And maybe if you're still in the field and you're already thinking about scaling up your business and being into that office position, this is going to apply to you as well, because, a lot of it kind of does catch up, whether, as time goes on, and it kind of just surprises us one day when we've added 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds to the scale, right? And all this really can be super frustrating. Like if you do want to take your shirt off with confidence in the bedroom or at the beach this year, right? So this is going to be really important to make that a reality, to get the outcome that you want in life. So the best place to start is really knowing your numbers, right? So think of tracking your macros and calories, kind of like tracking your KPIs in business, right? If you know your numbers, if you know where you're at, what gets measured gets managed, right? So on top of that, like you're able to know where your bottlenecks are. And often is the case where, we're the captain of the ship, we're the leaders of the business and all that kind of stuff. We are our own bottlenecks, right? The business doesn't often grow until we do. So we are often our own bottlenecks for getting the outcome that we want in life. So same thing applies with tracking the macros, tracking the calories. So here's how we can actually do that. So step one, and this is going to be your first 7 days. So step one, you're going to go ahead and download MyFitnessPal, right? And it doesn't have to be this. You can use any kind of typical calorie tracker and all that kind of stuff. But basically, you want to start this up. You want to get familiar with the app. So the first 7 days, really ignore the recommendations, right? Especially if this is your first time kind of setting up the app, it's probably going to ask you your height, your age, your weight, and then it's going to give you some generic numbers kind of based on that info. Typically, these are off, and it's just going to give you some generic recommendation. So the next step is really tracking every food and liquid that kind of goes in your mouth, right? So don't worry about hitting any specific numbers. You really just get in the rhythm of tracking, being familiar with the app, being familiar with the foods that you're eating, and being aware of the numbers that are coming back to you, right? And if you have your favorite meals that you have kind of week over week, there's some foods that you really enjoy, especially for dinner, breakfast, lunch, or whatever, you can save that and be more efficient so you don't have to keep inputting those same single ingredients every time, right? You're able to almost create like a bundle of those single ingredients that make up the meal that you enjoy. And then you're just able to swipe on that meal, and then it's going to input those single ingredients, tally up all those macros and calories for you to save you time and be a little bit more efficient. So on top of this, top of the daily tracking over the next 7 days, you're going to want to do some daily weigh-ins, right? So where you're at on the scale helps to figure out if you're in deficit, maintenance, or surplus, right? So if your weekly average weight stays the same, you're at maintenance. If your weekly average weight is going down, then you're at a deficit. And if the weight, the weekly average of the weight of the scale is going up, then you're in a surplus, right? And since our goal is fat loss here, if you're in a maintenance or you're in a surplus and you're not where you want to be, then you are eating too much and moving too little. In a nutshell, right? In simplistic terms. So after those 7 days, it's time to calculate your weekly macros. So what you're going to do is you're going to add up all your daily numbers, all the macros and calories you've tracked on MyFitnessPal or tracking app or whatever. You're going to divide those numbers by 7. Add all those numbers up, divide by 7, because over the course of those 7 days, this is going to be your weekly average of your macros, right? And if you're in a deficit, you don't need to change anything about your total intake. If you're at maintenance, you'll typically want to deduct maybe 300 calories. And if you're at a surplus, then you'll probably want to deduct up to 500 from your total daily intake to bring that down, right? So step 2 is knowing your numbers, right? So let's just assume you're in a deficit, right? Because that's our goal here. Let's just assume you're in a deficit. There's a couple ways I kind of like to break this down. So I'd like to separate it by those who are working in the field, super active, and those who are in the office a little bit more sedentary, right? Because that really depends on how we're going to split up our macros, especially specifically with fats and carbs, right? So let's assume, you're more, let's say you're someone who works in the field, right? Let's assume, a 230-pound male who wants to get down to 200 pounds and wants to lose 30 pounds and maybe even more, right? So what you're going to do is we're going to take our daily calories, whatever we calculated from the first week, our average that we calculated from the first week, our protein, we're going to have that about 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. This is typically going to be, if you put this on MyFitnessPal, it'll give you percentages, and that's what we're going to be working with here, because everyone's going to have their own total calories. And if we do it by percentage here, it makes it easier for everyone to understand, right? So we've got our protein here. This is going to be about 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. So if you're 230, you want to get down to 200, you're typically going to be having around 200 grams of protein. Now, this might seem a lot, and it might be a lot, especially if you're not used to that amount. So I like to put like a minimum threshold of anywhere between 170, 180, up to that 200 point, right? So I like to give myself a range. It's not a hard goal that we have to hit every single day. It's a soft goal. What's more important is the total intake, right? Again, if we're hitting our protein goals, but we're still overeating on everything else, right? So again, protein, one gram per pound of your goal weight. This is typically going to be anywhere between 35-40%, depending on how many calories you have available, right? And you don't want to slash your calories right away. You don't want to go super hard deficit right away, because it doesn't give you any room to work with as you go along here, because you're going to, as your body adjusts to your intake, it's typically going to happen that you need to deduct maybe 100, maybe 150 every 2-3 weeks, maybe every 4 weeks. It really depends on your body and where you're at and how things are adapting. And if you go to 1,200, 900 calories right away, you're slashing way too hard, way too quick, and you're going to burn out. It's inevitable that people burn out on that kind of stuff. To put it into perspective, 1,200 calories is like the average intake of a toddler, right? And if you're a grown adult male that's 230 pounds and wants to get down to 200 pounds, that is not a good strategy. That is not a good sustainable strategy for long term. Might work for rapid fat loss. Sure, you might lose a lot of weight, you might lose muscle, you might lose water weight, which is what you don't want. You just want to lose fat. And that strategy might work for a little bit, but long term, to make this part of your lifestyle, to make this a permanent change, you want to make it a gradual deduction. So enough of that little tangent. I'm going to go into that a little bit later here. So again, going back to the macros, setting it up. Protein, 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. Again, this is for someone who works in the field, typically more active, getting a lot more steps, still a craftsman, still working in the craft, if you will. So again, 35 to 40% intake, depending on how many calories you have available. Fats are going to be 25 to maybe 30%. And then carbs are going to be a little bit more, 30 to 35%. So as you go along and maybe you need to deduct calories, you can take those from the carbs as you go along. And then this is for someone who works in the office. Again, let's assume again, 230-pound male who wants to get down to 200 pounds. Again, daily calories, this is going to be whatever we calculated from that average from the first week. Protein, 1 gram per pound of your goal weight. Again, this is typically going to be 35-40%, depending on how many calories you have available. And then fats are going to be 35-40%. And then carbs, 20 to 25%. So we can get away with a little bit less carbs when we're in the office because we're not moving as much, right? And again, these aren't hard numbers you have to hit every day, but they do kind of give you a framework to play with. They give you some structure to play around with. And, if you do like those darker cuts of meat, then your fats will naturally be higher, right? And good fats are really good for you, especially in terms of hormonal regulation, testosterone, all that kind of stuff. So then it's a matter of bringing your carbs down so you don't blow your calories and kind of move up to maintenance or surplus. So typically, if you hit your protein goals, then the carbs and fats only need minor adjustments as you go along. Especially as you eat more protein, you're going to be more full. It's going to be more filling meals. So that snacking is naturally going to go down. You're going to feel a lot better. You're not going to be just eating out of boredom. You're always going to have that fullness, if you will. And then step 3. So that was just step 2 here, kind of setting the groundwork for what needs to get done. And then step 3 here is kind of week 3 and beyond, until you need a break from being in a deficit, right? So that typically happens after 10 to 16 weeks, where at a certain point you just hit a wall. You can't cut back any more food. You can't do any more exercise. You just feel like shit, right? You just feel like shit. The sleep goes to crap. Your energy is low. The stresses of life feel like you feel a lot bigger than what they should be. And you're more shorter fused, if you will. Your temper is a little bit sharper, if you will. So those are all things that you've really got to listen to your own body as you go along, because at a certain point you can't just double down and cut back more food. You can't just double down and do more exercise. It's best to actually take a break. And maybe you need to take a break for a month. Maybe you need to take a break for 2 months. Maybe you need to take a break for 3 months, depending on how long you've been in that deficit, because you can't be in a deficit forever. This is where it's good to go up to maintenance, hang out for a bit, which is where a lot of people should spend most of their life, just hanging out at maintenance, right? Just enjoying it. Don't necessarily need to track everything. Things become a little bit more intuitive, because if you've been tracking for 2-3 months while you're in this deficit, you'll naturally have this intuition of how many calories things are going to be, what your macros are, just by kind of looking at the plate, looking at the food, because you have that skill, right? And this is a skill nobody can take away from you, because you've developed it, you've worked on it, you've gotten more accurate with it as time goes on. So really knowing how to track your calories, really knowing how to track your macros is a precursor to intuitive eating, right? I don't expect everyone to track their macros and calories forever. At my stage, I don't track it. I'm more at maintenance, just intuitive eating. I've got a good idea of what macros are just by kind of looking at the food. So this is really important to know. So as we continue along here, step 3, week 3, and beyond until you need that diet break, typically after 10 to 16 weeks, every day you're still going to do your daily weigh-ins so you can create that weekly downward trend of fat loss, right? There's going to be some daily fluctuations, but week over week, there should be that average downward trend, right? What gets measured gets managed. So what do you do if nothing changes on the scale? Right. So the scale is just one part of the picture, right? One piece of the puzzle, if you will. It's just one piece of the puzzle. It doesn't tell everything. It doesn't tell the whole story, right? Because if you take your progress pictures as well, if you're tracking, you're looking yourself in the mirror, things are fitting better, your clothes are fitting better, pants are maybe a little bit more loose, shirts are a little bit more loose, not as tight. You could be building muscle and losing fat at the same time, which is exactly what you want, right? This happens to a lot of beginners and, typically people who haven't trained in years, right? But if you have some serious weight to lose, then cutting back on your calories is the next move, right? Especially if you're active throughout the week, which is just as important, right? You don't want to just slash all your food and not do any kind of activity. Your body will find ways to make you lazy and not burn as many calories that you just cut away from, right? So this is why it's important to stay active, keep up with your steps, maybe do some additional cardio, maybe there's some cardio that you enjoy, a machine that's really maybe easy on your knees, easy on your hips, easy on your body that you can actually enjoy and continue with. It's a good way to keep your heart healthy and burn some extra calories at the same time. So let's say you do want to shave some calories away. This is where we're going to shave off maybe 100, 150 from your daily calories and see if that makes a change, right? If the scale, is typically the same after a week or two, then take off another 100 calories for a total of 250, right? So if you started at 2,000, now you're at 1,750, we're shaving some away, right? So why not take off more? Why not just drop down? Why not just shave off another 500? Well, believe it or not, your body actually doesn't like rapid fat loss. And if you lose 1 to 3 pounds a week, you'll be in a good place to keep the weight off permanently, especially without kind of yo-yo dieting, and going back to where you were. A lot of people kind of, again, as I mentioned, just shave those calories off way too quick and then bounce back to where they were. So as always, even when you shave off those calories, you want to keep your protein around 1 gram per pound of your goal weight to take away, and to take away those 100, maybe 250 calories, it'll need to come from your carbs or your fats, right? So if you're already eating plenty of lean meats, you can cut back on those carbs, like those breads or added sugars, or things that just aren't digesting well, right? So this is where it's just as important to listen to your body. Your body will tell you what's doing well, what isn't, what needs to change. And if you're more on the fattier cuts of meat, this is where you can actually swap out a meal of darker cuts of meat for maybe something a little bit more leaner, right? Like chicken or turkey, like white fish and all that kind of stuff. So on top of that, cutting back mindless snacking along with liquid calories, cutting back your liquid calories can make a huge difference, right? It's an easy, low-hanging fruit to make a change. I'm going to grab some water here. We've been talking for quite a bit. So step 4, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, right? Everyone is going to lose fat, lose weight at their own speed. And typically with those who have a lot more weight to lose, will lose it faster, right? If someone has 50, 75, 100 pounds to lose, they can get away with up to, 3, they would be on the higher end of that range of 3 pounds per week on average, because they have some serious weight to lose. And it is within their best interest to lose that as quickly as possible and as sustainably as possible, right? While still building muscle on top of that. And those with less fat will lose it slower. Like if someone just has 5, 10, 15 pounds just to get a little bit leaner, that will be typically a slower pace to preserve as much muscle as possible. So make this journey part of your lifestyle, not just something you do for a month or two and fall off because you went hard in the paint and didn't make it work for you. And if you're really not sure on how to make it work for you and really get started with all this, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message, and let's chat. Would love to see if we're even able to help you out in any way possible. So hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. More than happy to help out. Cheers.